Commander Talavesh stared at the emergency lighting pulsing through the Starweaver's bridge, its crystalline surfaces reflecting a desperate situation. The ship's quantum core was failing, and with it, the advanced systems that had made the Meridian vessels the pride of known space. Their attackers had known exactly where to hit them. "Status report," she commanded, her translucent fingers dancing across holographic controls that flickered and died with each power surge. The bridge crew's bioluminescent markings glowed brighter with stress, casting eerie shadows across their stations. Quantum core containment at 18% and falling. First Engineer Zinn reported, his usual melodic voice cracking. "We've lost primary and secondary stabilization. The containment field won't hold for more than 6 hours." Tala's secondary nervous system pulsed with anxiety. The Starweaver, pride of the Meridian fleet, had been reduced to a dying hulk in deep space. The pirates had struck with impossible precision, using weapons that shouldn't exist in this sector. Their crystalline hull, capable of adapting to almost any conventional attack, had been shattered by something that defied their sensors. "Life support?" she asked, already dreading the answer. "Operating on emergency power. 3 days at most, Commander," Lieutenant Rick answered from the environmental station. "The atmospheric processors are struggling to maintain optimal crystal resonance for our biology." 2,000 crew members, 2,000 of the finest Meridian minds, trapped in a failing ship, days from the nearest outpost. The pirates had chosen their ambush point well, striking in the dead zone between regular patrol routes. "Send another distress call," Tala ordered, knowing it was futile. Their quantum communicators were dead, and conventional signals would take weeks to reach help. "Use everything we have left." "Commander," Sensor Officer Mira's voice carried an odd note. "I'm detecting unusual gravitational distortions at the edge of our range. Multiple signatures, moving faster than our charts indicate should be possible." Tala felt her crystals resonate with fresh fear. The pirates returning to finish us. "No." Mira's markings pulsed with confusion. "These signatures, they're using some form of crude faster-than-light drive. The energy patterns are completely different. They're Terran vessels." A collective shudder ran through the bridge crew. Everyone knew about the Terrans, the Deathworlders who had somehow dragged themselves into space, using technologies that should have torn their ships apart. Their vessels were ugly, utilitarian things that ignored half the laws of physics through sheer stubbornness. Terrans, this far out. Tala's primary heart skipped a beat. Why would they? "They're hailing us," Communications Officer Lin announced, surprise evident in his crystalline features. It's a rescue signal." Before Tala could respond, a voice cut through their dying communication system. It was deep, resonant in a way that made their crystals vibrate sympathetically, and filled with an urgency that defied their preconceptions of primitive Deathworlders. "Meridian vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Emergency Response Ship Humanity's Reach. We've detected your distress signal and critical system failures. We are equipped for deep space rescue operations. Please respond with your status and immediate needs." The bridge crew looked to Tala, their markings flickering with uncertainty. Meridians were proud of their technological superiority, their crystalline biology that had evolved in the pure vacuum of space, accepting help from Deathworlders who had crawled out of gravity's grip through brute force. Another explosion rocked the ship as a power conduit failed. The quantum core's containment dropped another percentage point. Pride meant nothing if they were all dead. "This is Commander Talavesh of the Meridian vessel Starweaver," she responded, her voice steady despite her fear. "We have multiple critical failures, including core containment breach and life support degradation. 2,000 crew members at risk. We accept your assistance." The response was immediate. "Understood. Commander Vesh, hold tight. We're coming to bring you home." As the massive shapes of Terran rescue ships emerged from their impossible drives, Tala realized that perhaps their two species had more to learn from each other than anyone had imagined. Captain Sarah Chen watched the holographic display as her fleet surrounded the stricken Meridian vessel. The Starweaver was beautiful even in its damaged state, a massive crystalline structure that seemed to catch and reflect every star in the void. But beauty wouldn't keep 2,000 aliens alive. "Engineering, what are we looking at?" she demanded, her eyes never leaving the simulation of the failing quantum core. Chief Engineer Marcus Rodriguez's hologram appeared beside her, his dark eyes scanning through data streams. "It's bad, Captain. Their containment technology is incredibly advanced, but it's failing in a cascade. Traditional methods won't work. Their systems are too alien for our standard interfaces." "Then we get creative," Sarah replied. "That's what humans do best. Options. We could try something insane," Marcus said, a familiar glint in his eye. "Their quantum core operates on principles we barely understand, but energy is energy. If we reconfigure our gravitational tethers—" "Do it," Sarah cut him off. "I trust your insanity more than most people's sanity. Dr. Wells, what about the crew?" The ship's chief medical officer materialized in the briefing zone. "Their crystalline biology is fascinating, Captain. They literally resonate with spatial energy. The pirates' weapons disrupted that resonance. That's why their injuries are so severe. But we've adapted our medical stasis fields to match their frequency. We can keep them stable if we get them off that ship." Sarah nodded, her mind already calculating logistics. "Lieutenant Park, status of the evacuation shuttles?" "Modified and ready, Captain. We've adjusted the artificial gravity and atmospheric processors to match Meridian specifications." But Park hesitated. "They're not going to like our solution for their quantum core." "They don't have to like it," Sarah said. "They just have to survive it. All hands, prepare for emergency evacuation protocols. And someone get me Commander Vesh on the line." The holographic face of the Meridian commander appeared, her crystalline features refracting light in complex patterns that human xenologists were still trying to decode as emotional indicators. "Commander Vesh," Sarah began, "we have a plan to save your crew, but you're not going to enjoy it. We need to evacuate the Starweaver immediately." "Impossible." Vesh's response was immediate. "Our species cannot survive rapid transitions between spatial environments. The resonance disruption alone would shatter us." "With respect, Commander, that's not entirely accurate," Sarah countered. "We've been studying your biology since first contact. Our medical stasis fields can maintain your crystalline resonance during transport, but we need to move fast. Your core containment is failing faster than predicted." "And what of the Starweaver itself?" Vesh demanded. "This ship represents generations of Meridian engineering. We cannot simply abandon it." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Who said anything about abandonment? Chief Rodriguez has a plan for your quantum core. It's completely insane and violates about 6 laws of physics, but it might just work. You propose to interface human technology with our quantum systems." The disbelief in Vesh's voice was clear. "The energy differentials alone would." An alarm shrieked through both ships. The Starweaver's containment field had dropped another 5%. "Commander," Sarah's voice was steel wrapped in silk, "in about 4 hours, your ship's quantum core will breach. When that happens, it will take your crew, your ship, and probably half of my rescue fleet with it. We can have a theoretical debate about technological compatibility, or we can save 2,000 lives. Your choice." The crystalline features shifted, refracting light in new patterns. Sarah had seen enough Meridian expressions to recognize internal conflict. "How?" Vesh finally asked. "How would you even attempt to stabilize our core?" "By being typically human," Sarah replied. "We're going to ignore the impossible and do it anyway." "Chief Rodriguez." Marcus stepped forward, his hologram overlaying a technical schematic. "We'll use our gravitational tethers to create a containment bubble, then inject it with dark matter to simulate your quantum field effects. It's never been done before, but the math checks out. Mostly. That's... Vesh seemed to struggle for words. That's not how quantum mechanics works. Maybe not in your physics, Sarah said. But humans have a way of making things work through sheer stubbornness. Commander, I know this goes against everything your people believe about technology, about proper procedures, about us. But right now, stubbornness and impossible solutions are all we have. Will you trust us? The silence stretched for what felt like eternity. Sarah could see the battle playing out in those alien features. Pride versus survival. Tradition versus necessity. Finally, Vesh spoke. Begin evacuation procedures. But Captain, if this fails, it won't, Sarah promised. Humanity's reach. Commence Operation Impossible Physics. Let's show our crystalline friends why sometimes the craziest solution is the right one. Chief Engineer Marcus Rodriguez stood in the Humanities Reach's engineering bay, surrounded by a storm of holographic displays showing the Starweaver's failing systems. Beside him, First Engineer Zin of the Meridians watched with crystalline features locked in what Marcus had learned to recognize as an expression of horror. This is madness, Zin whispered, his crystalline body resonating with stress frequencies. You cannot simply force quantum fields into stability through gravitational manipulation. The theoretical frameworks alone. Theory's great, Marcus replied, his fingers dancing through the holographic controls. But I prefer results. Look at these containment readings. Your quantum core is operating on principles we barely understand, but energy is energy. If we can't stabilize it your way, we'll do it ours. The massive gravitational tethers of the Humanities Reach were already extending, weaving a complex web around the Starweaver's damaged hull. Each tether point glowed with dark matter injectors, a technology that had made half the theoretical physics community scream in protest when it was first developed. Captain, Marcus called over the comm. Tether network is at 60% completion. We'll be ready for the first containment attempt in 10 minutes. Make it 5. Sarah's voice crackled back. The evacuation teams are reporting structural instabilities in the Starweaver's aft sections. We're running out of time. In the medical bay, Dr. Emily Wells was facing her own challenges. The first wave of Meridian evacuees had arrived, their crystalline bodies humming with dangerous resonance patterns. Traditional medical equipment had to be completely reconfigured to handle their unique biology. Maintain stasis field harmony. She ordered her team, watching as they adjusted the fields microsecond by microsecond. Their molecular structure depends on perfect quantum resonance. One mistake, and we'll have crystalline fragmentation. A young Meridian medical officer named Lyre worked alongside her, their initial fear of human technology gradually giving way to fascination. Your adaptive approach to medicine. It's unorthodox, but the results are undeniable. We were taught that human technology was crude, inefficient. Crude works sometimes, Emily smiled, adjusting the stasis field. Humans had to learn to make do with what we had. When you evolve on a death world, you can't afford to wait for perfect solutions. Back in engineering, Marcus was ready for the attempt that would either save the Starweaver or tear it apart. All hands, brace for gravitational manipulation. Captain, requesting final authorization. Do it. Sarah's command was immediate. Commander Vesh, we're about to attempt stabilization. Your crew. 80% evacuated. Vesh reported from her position on the Humanities Reach's bridge. The rest are in secured zones. We're ready, Captain. And thank you, regardless of the outcome. Marcus took a deep breath, initiating gravitational containment web. Dark matter injection in 3, 2, 1. The space around the Starweaver distorted as dozens of gravitational tethers activated simultaneously. Dark matter flowed through the network like liquid night, creating artificial quantum fields that wrapped around the failing core. Warning alarms screamed as physics itself protested the violation of its laws. Core containment rising. Zin called out, his crystalline features bright with disbelief. It's actually working. The quantum resonance is stabilizing. Don't celebrate yet, Marcus warned, his hands flying over the controls. We need to maintain field harmony across all tether points. One misalignment, and the whole network collapses. Dr. Wells, how are our patients handling the gravitational shifts? Stasis fields are compensating, Emily reported. Their resonance patterns are actually improving. Something about the dark matter field is helping stabilize their molecular structure. Impossible, Liar whispered. You're using gravity itself to simulate quantum effects. Our greatest scientists said this could never be done. Yeah, well, Marcus grinned as he fine-tuned the containment web. Humans have a bad habit of doing impossible things. We're too stubborn to know when to quit. Captain, core containment is holding at 60% and rising. I think we might actually pull this off. Well done, all of you. Sarah's voice carried proud satisfaction. Commander Vesh, looks like your ship is going to make it. Once we get the core fully stabilized, we can begin repairs on your hull systems. In the silence that followed, Vesh's crystalline features shifted through patterns that no human translator could quite capture. Finally, she spoke, her voice carrying an emotion that transcended species barriers. Captain Chen, your people have done more than save our ship. You've shown us that there's more than one path to the stars, more than one way to solve a problem. Perhaps we Meridians have been too proud of our advanced technology, too dismissive of approaches that differ from our own. That's the thing about space, Sarah replied softly. It's big enough for all of us, all our different ways of thinking. Sometimes the best solutions come from combining those differences. As the Starweaver's quantum core stabilized under its web of impossible physics, humans and Meridians worked side by side, each learning from the other, each finding strength in their differences. And in the void between stars, a new understanding began to crystallize. 3 days after the quantum core stabilization, the medical bay of humanity's reach had become an unprecedented site of cultural exchange. Dr. Emily Wells watched as her human medical team worked alongside Meridian healers, each learning from the other's techniques. The crystalline aliens no longer flinched at the sight of human technology, and her staff had begun to understand the subtle harmonics of Meridian biology. Your species continues to surprise us, Liar commented, adjusting a resonance scanner they'd modified with human sensor technology. You approach problems with such creativity. It defies conventional logic, yet produces remarkable results. Emily smiled as she reviewed patient data on her holographic display. That's because we had to get creative to survive. Earth isn't just a death world. It's a world that tried to kill us in a new way every day. We learned to adapt, to think around corners. Across the room, a young human nurse was learning Meridian healing harmonics, her voice trying to match the precise frequencies that could help stabilize crystalline structures. Her Meridian instructor's features rippled with what Emily had learned was amusement at her attempts. Watch this, Emily said, pulling up a comparison scan. See how the human-modified stasis fields actually improved recovery rates. By combining our gravitational technology with your quantum harmonics, we've created something entirely new. In engineering, Marcus and Zinn had developed their own unlikely partnership. The Meridian engineer had overcome his initial skepticism and now eagerly explored the principles behind human technological innovations. Your species took completely different paths to the stars, Zinn observed, studying the dark matter injection system. We evolved in the void, developed technology that worked in harmony with quantum fields. You fought your way up from crushing gravity, built machines that bent physics to your will. Different problems, different solutions, Marcus replied, showing him the modifications they'd made to interface human and Meridian systems. But look what happens when we combine them. Your quantum precision with our brute force approach, it's opening up possibilities neither of us imagined. On the bridge, Captain Chen and Commander Vesh were engaged in their own form of cultural exchange. The Meridian commander had been fascinated by human tactical simulations, particularly their emphasis on unconventional solutions. These pirate attacks, Sarah mused, reviewing sensor data. They knew exactly how to disrupt your quantum systems. That suggests inside knowledge. Agreed. Vesh's crystalline features shifted in what Sarah now recognized as concern. Their weapons were designed specifically to shatter our resonance patterns. We assumed our technology was beyond their comprehension. That's the thing about assumptions, Sarah replied. They make you vulnerable. Humans learned that lesson the hard way. Want to know our secret weapon? Your innovative technology. No, Sarah smiled. Our greatest strength is knowing we're not the strongest, the smartest, or the most advanced. It keeps us humble, keeps us learning, keeps us looking for new ways to solve problems. Vesh's features rippled in thought. Yet you achieved faster than light travel, developed dark matter technology, created medical techniques that can heal species you barely understood, all while working with what we considered primitive tools. Because we had to, Sarah explained. We couldn't rely on natural advantages or elegant solutions. We had to get creative, take risks, try the impossible. And now look at us. Human ingenuity combined with meridian precision. We're stronger together than either of us are alone. Throughout the ship, similar scenes play out. Human crew members learn to appreciate the subtle beauty of crystalline technology, while Meridians began to see the elegant efficiency in human crude solutions. Medical techniques merge, engineering principles combined, and cultural barriers began to dissolve. In the observation deck, a group of off-duty crew members from both species had gathered. A human engineer was attempting to explain Earth sports to fascinated Meridians, while a Meridian artist demonstrated how to create resonance harmonies that made the viewport crystals sing with color. You know what I think? Emily said to Lyre as they watched the interaction. This is how we beat those pirates, not just with technology or tactics, but by learning from each other. They expected the Meridians to be too proud to accept help, expected humans to be too primitive to provide it. Instead, Lyre's features sparkled with what Emily now knew was joy. We proved that true advancement comes from being willing to learn, to adapt, to see strength in our differences. As the Starweaver underwent repairs, strengthened by human innovation and meridian precision, a new kind of alliance was forming. One based not on technological superiority or evolutionary advantages, but on the simple truth that the universe was vast enough for many paths to the stars, and those paths were strongest when they converge. 1 week after the rescue, the Starweaver hung in space beside humanity's reach, its crystalline hull now reinforced with a hybrid of human and meridian technology. The quantum core hummed with perfect stability, maintained by a permanent gravitational web that defied traditional physics. But the greatest changes weren't in the technology. They were in the people. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the newly created Joint Command Center, where holographic displays showed a blend of human and meridian data streams. Commander Vesh's crystalline form refracted light in patterns that Sarah had learned to read as determination. The pirate attack wasn't random. Vesh announced to the gathered officers. Analysis of their weapon signatures suggests they're testing our vulnerabilities, preparing for something bigger. They expected the Starweaver to be destroyed, Sarah added, leaving no evidence of their new quantum disruption technology. They didn't count on our species working together. Chief Engineer Rodriguez stepped forward, his holographic presentation showing a merged sensor analysis. Commander Vesh and I have been combining our sensor data. The pirates' weapons use a corrupted version of Meridian quantum technology, but the delivery systems are modified from old human designs. They're learning from both our species. Then we'll learn faster, Dr. Wells interjected. The chief medical officer had been working with Meridian healers to document the unexpected benefits of their combined medical techniques. The resonance stabilization methods we developed during the rescue, they're not just for emergencies. We're seeing applications in everything from hull repair to long-range communications. First Engineer Zin's features brightened with excitement. The human approach to problem-solving. This thinking around corners, as they call it, it's revolutionary, combined with our quantum precision. He paused, his crystalline structure humming with emotion. We've achieved more in 1 week of cooperation than in decades of separate development. Which brings us to our proposal, Sarah said, nodding to Vesh. The Meridian High Council and Earth Fleet Command need to know about this threat. But more importantly, they need to see what we've accomplished together. Vesh's features shifted through complex patterns before settling. Our peoples have long viewed each other with suspicion. Meridians saw humans as primitive beings who brute forced their way to the stars. Humans saw us as arrogant, inflexible. We were both right, Sarah smiled. And we were both wrong. Our differences aren't weaknesses, they're opportunities. Look at what we've created here. Around them, human and Meridian crew members worked seamlessly together. In engineering, hybrid systems pulsed with unprecedented efficiency. The medical bay had become a center for groundbreaking research. Even the ship's mess hall had been modified to accommodate both species, becoming an unexpected hub of cultural exchange. The pirates thought our differences would keep us isolated, vulnerable, Vesh continued. Instead, those differences have made us stronger. Captain Chin and I are proposing the creation of a permanent joint task force. The announcement sent ripples of excitement through both crews. Sarah brought up a new holographic display, showing a proposed design for a hybrid vessel that combined the best of both species' technology. The Starweaver incident proved that we're stronger together, Sarah declared. But it also showed us something more important. There's more than one way to reach the stars, more than one path to solving a problem. The pirates are counting on our peoples remaining separate, proud, set in our ways. Let them come. Vesh's features blazed with confidence. They'll find something they never expected, humans and Meridians standing together, each making the other stronger. In the days that followed, as the joint proposal was transmitted to both governments, something unprecedented happened. The crew of the Starweaver and humanity's reach refused to separate. Engineers from both species continued their collaborative work, medical teams pursued their joint research, and cultural barriers dissolved into friendship. The pirates had intended to exploit the gap between their species. Instead, they had inadvertently bridged it. As the Starweaver prepared to depart, now escorted by the humanity's reach, its hull gleaming with hybrid technology, both crews knew they had discovered something more valuable than any technological advancement. They had found a new way forward together. You know what the pirates really didn't understand? Sarah asked Vesh as they watched their crews exchange farewell celebrations. What's that, Captain? That strength doesn't come from having the most advanced technology, or the most elegant solutions, or even the most powerful weapons. It comes from being willing to learn from each other, to adapt, to see value in different perspectives. Vesh's crystalline features shifted into what Sarah now recognized as a smile. Perhaps that is the true mark of an advanced civilization, not the height it has reached, but its willingness to keep climbing, to reach out to others on different paths. As the ships prepared to depart, their crews forever changed by their time together. A new chapter in both species' history had begun. The pirates had sought to exploit their differences, but instead had catalyzed something revolutionary, a partnership that would reshape the future of both their peoples. In the end, it wasn't just about saving a ship or stopping pirates. It was about proving that the path to the stars was wide enough for everyone, and that the greatest discoveries came not from walking it alone, but from joining hands across the void and walking it together.
The execution, the grand chamber of the Stellar Confederacy, stretched like a cathedral of crystal and light, its walls adorned with the symbols of 1,000 civilizations. At its center, standing in chains that hummed with energy, was Ambassador Alina Vasquez. Her dark hair was disheveled, her diplomatic uniform torn, but her eyes burned with defiance that made even the most powerful beings in the galaxy shift uncomfortably in their seats. The trial had been a mockery from the beginning. Alina knew it, the assembled alien dignitaries knew it, and somewhere deep in their crystalline hearts, even the judges knew it. This wasn't about justice. This was about fear. High Magistrate Zephan, a towering creature whose body seemed carved from living marble, raised his 6 arms in judgment. His voice echoed through translation matrices in a dozen languages, but the contempt needed no translation. Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the species known as humans, Zephan intoned. You stand accused of the highest crime against galactic order, cultural contamination, diplomatic interference, and the gravest sin of altering lesser species to think beyond. Their station, Elena almost laughed. The crime they spoke of was peace. 3 months ago, she had successfully mediated a ceasefire between the Krell Empire and the Thaxan Republic, 2 species that had been locked in a devastating war for over 2 centuries. The conflict had claimed billions of lives and threatened to destabilize an entire sector of the galaxy, where the Confederacy's best diplomats had failed for generations. Elena had succeeded in mere weeks, not through threats or superior technology, but through something the aliens couldn't understand: genuine empathy and creative problem-solving. She had found common ground where the Confederacy saw only irreconcilable differences. That was her. Crime, a human, had succeeded where the galaxy's self-proclaimed masters had failed. The defendant will speak her final words, Zephan announced, his voice carrying the weight of inevitable doom. Elena straightened her shoulders and looked directly into the recording devices that would broadcast her words across known space. Every human colony, every Earth settlement, every mining station in the Outer Rim would see this moment. She thought of her daughter Maria, safe on Earth, probably watching with tears in her eyes. She thought of her husband Carlos, who had begged her not to take this assignment. Most of all, she thought of the children on Krell Prime and Thaxan Beta, who were alive today because she had helped their leaders choose peace over war. I came here believing in the power of words over weapons, Elena said, her voice steady despite the energy dampeners that made speaking painful. I believed that different species could work together, could find solutions that benefited everyone. I was naive. She paused, looking each of the alien magistrates in their various optical organs. I thought the Stellar Confederacy wanted peace. But you don't want peace. You want control. You want other species to bow down and accept their place in your hierarchy. When the Krell and Thaxan chose cooperation over conflict, when they chose to solve their problems without your intervention, you saw it as a threat. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some alien delegates shifted nervously, recognizing the truth in her words. You're executing me because I proved that you're not necessary, Elena continued, her voice growing stronger. You're killing me because I showed the galaxy that there are other ways to solve problems besides the Confederacy's way. You're afraid that if one human can accomplish what your best diplomats couldn't, maybe your entire system is built on a lie. High Magistrate, Zephan's crystalline features darkened. Enough. The sentence is death by disintegration. Let this serve as a warning to all species who would dare to disrupt the natural order. Elena smiled, an expression so human and alien too. The assembled dignitaries that many recoiled. The natural order. There's nothing natural about oppression. There's nothing natural about telling entire civilizations they're not worthy of self-determination. The energy manacles around her wrists began to glow brighter, preparing for the final phase. Elena felt the familiar tingle that meant the disintegration. Field was charging. She had perhaps 30 seconds left. Tell Earth, she said, looking directly into the main broadcast array. We tried to do this the peaceful way. The light consumed her, and Ambassador Elena Vasquez, the first human to walk in the halls of galactic power, was gone. But her words had already begun their journey home, on Earth. In the heavily fortified bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, President Sarah Chen watched the execution with a face carved from stone. Around the Situation Room table sat the most powerful humans in existence: military commanders, intelligence chiefs, colonial governors, and corporate leaders who controlled resources across a dozen star systems. Admiral James Morrison, commander of Earth's Deep Space Fleet, was the first to break the silence. His weathered face showed none of the emotion burning in his chest, but his knuckles were white where they gripped the table's edge. "Madam President," he said quietly, "recommend we implement Protocol Omega." Every person in the room understood what that meant. Protocol Omega was Earth's most classified military directive, developed in secret over the past 50 years. It was humanity's answer to the question that had haunted them since first contact. What happens when diplomacy fails? Elena's mission had been diplomacy. Her death was the failure. President Chen looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. These weren't warmongering politicians or power-hungry generals. They were parents, grandparents, people who had dedicated their lives to building a better future for humanity. But they had also learned from history. They knew what happened to civilizations that appeared weak. "Are we certain about our capabilities?" Chen asked. General Patricia Kim, head of Earth's Strategic Command, activated a holographic display. Star charts filled the air, showing the disposition of Confederacy forces across 3 sectors of space. "We've been watching them for decades," Kim said. "Their military doctrine is based on intimidation and overwhelming force against individual targets. They've never faced a coordinated response from a united species. Their technology is advanced, but it's designed for policing actions, not total war." Dr. Rebecca Torres, Earth's chief xenobiologist and strategic analyst, added her assessment. "The Confederacy rules through fear and bureaucracy. They maintain control by keeping member species isolated and dependent. They've never had to fight an enemy that thinks outside their established parameters." Admiral Morrison leaned forward. "Alina was right about one thing. They killed her because she proved their system is flawed. A single human diplomat accomplished more in 3 months than their entire bureaucracy managed in 2 centuries. They're not as smart or as powerful as they pretend to be." Captain Lisa Jong, Morrison's chief of staff, pulled up another display. "Our deep space reconnaissance has identified critical infrastructure targets across 17 Confederacy worlds. Their communication networks, resource distribution centers, and administrative hubs all follow predictable patterns. They've been so secure in their power for so long that they've become careless." President Chen studied the data for long minutes. The room remained silent except for the hum of electronics and the distant rumble of the mountain's defensive systems. Finally, she spoke. Alina Vasquez believed in the power of words. She believed in the possibility of peaceful coexistence. She died for those beliefs. Chon's voice hardened, but she also sent us a message. She told us we tried to do this the peaceful way. Past tense, tried. She stood, and everyone in the room rose with her. The Stellar Confederacy has made its position clear. They view humanity as a threat to be eliminated. They murdered our ambassador in cold blood and broadcast it across the galaxy as a warning. They want to send a message about what happens to species that don't know their place. President Chun's eyes were cold as winter. "I think it's time we sent a message of our own." The vote was unanimous. Within 6 hours, every human military asset in known space received the same coded transmission. "Protocol Omega authorized. Target acquisition approved. Execute when ready. The message was just 12 words, but it would reshape the galaxy forever. On Lunar Base, Admiral Morrison stood in the command center watching his fleet prepare for deployment. The ships weren't the crude vessels the Confederacy expected. Humanity had been building in secret for decades, developing technologies that aliens had never seen, preparing for the day when peaceful coexistence proved impossible. Alina had been their first choice, their best hope for a diplomatic solution. She had been brilliant, dedicated, and genuinely committed to peace. Her death proved that the Confederacy would never accept humanity as equals. Morrison thought about Elena's final words as he gave the launch order. They had tried to do this the peaceful way. Now they would try something else entirely. The reckoning, the first sign that humanity was not what the Stellar Confederacy believed, came 18 hours after Elena's execution. High Magistrate Zephan was reviewing reports in his crystal tower on the capital world of Nexus Prime when the alarms began screaming. His aide, a nervous creature called Vith, whose species had served the Confederacy for 8 centuries, burst into the chamber with terror radiating from his bioluminescent patches. Magistrate, unknown vessels approaching the system. There, not responding to our identification requests. Zephan extended his sensory tendrils toward the tactical displays. What he saw made no sense. The approaching fleet consisted of ship designs he didn't recognize, angular vessels that moved with predatory grace through the void. Their energy signatures were unlike anything in the Confederacy database. How many? Zephan demanded. 67 confirmed contacts, but they're still dropping out of hyperspace. The formations are ... unusual. They're not following any known tactical doctrine. Zephan felt the first stirring of unease. The Confederacy maintained the galaxy's most comprehensive military database. Every species, every ship class, every weapon system was catalogued and analyzed. Nothing should be unknown. Send a warning transmission, he ordered. Full priority diplomatic channels. Tell them they're violating Confederacy space. The response came not in words, but in action. The lead human vessel, a kilometer-long predator called the Retribution, fired a single projectile toward Nexus Prime. Zephan watched in confusion as the projectile streaked through the atmosphere, ignoring the planetary defense systems that should have vaporized it instantly. The projectile struck the crystal spire housing the Confederacy's central communications array. The explosion was precisely calibrated, powerful enough to destroy the target completely, but contained enough to avoid collateral damage to surrounding structures. Then came the transmission, broadcast on every frequency, in every language, to every world in Confederacy space. The face that appeared on screens across the galaxy belonged to Admiral James Morrison. His appearance was unremarkable by galactic standards. No crystalline features, no exotic biology, no obvious enhancements. Just a middle-aged human with grey hair and eyes like Arctic ice. "I am Admiral Morrison of the United Earth Fleet," he said, his voice carrying the authority of absolute conviction. 43 hours ago, you executed Ambassador Elena Vasquez in violation of every principle of civilized diplomacy. You murdered an unarmed representative whose only crime was successfully negotiating peace between 2 species you couldn't control. Morrison paused, and the silence stretched across star systems. On 1,000 worlds, billions of beings watched their screens in stunned disbelief. Many had never seen a human before. All had been taught that humans were a primitive species, barely worthy of notice. You killed Elena Vasquez because she proved that your system is built on lies, Morrison continued. You maintain power not through wisdom or justice, but through fear and oppression. You execute anyone who threatens your authority, even those who seek only peace. On Nexus Prime, Zaphon was frantically signaling his fleet commanders. The Confederacy Navy was the most powerful military force in known space, with over 3,000 vessels distributed across their territory. They could crush any single species with overwhelming force. But as Zaphon watched his tactical displays, he realized something that filled him with cold dread. The human fleet wasn't positioning for a conventional engagement. Instead of forming battle lines or establishing defensive positions, the strange ships were spreading out in a pattern that made no tactical sense. Elena Vasquez was a diplomat. Morrison's voice continued from every screen in Confederacy space. She believed in the power of negotiation, in finding common ground, in building bridges between different species. You killed her for those beliefs. The Admiral's expression hardened. We are not diplomats. What happened next would be studied by military historians for centuries. The human fleet didn't engage the Confederacy forces in traditional ship-to-ship combat. Instead, they demonstrated a level of strategic thinking and technological sophistication that shattered every assumption about their capabilities. Captain Lisa Jong, commanding the heavy cruiser Perseverance, led the assault on the Confederacy's primary military depot in the Rigel system. Instead of attacking the heavily defended orbital stations, her task force targeted the automated supply ships that kept the depot operational. Within 2 hours, the Confederacy's largest military base was cut off from food, fuel, and ammunition. Dr. Michael Torres, now serving as strategic coordinator aboard the flagship Retribution, had spent decades studying Confederacy infrastructure. His analysis had identified critical vulnerabilities that the aliens had never considered. The Confederacy's greatest strength, their vast, bureaucratic network that controlled thousands of worlds, was also their greatest weakness. Torres had mapped every communication relay, every administrative center, every resource distribution hub. The human fleet didn't need to destroy entire worlds. They just needed to sever the connections that held the Confederacy together. On the industrial world of Carathan, home to the Confederacy's primary weapons manufacturing facilities, Commander Sarah Patel led a surgical strike that disabled the planet's orbital elevators. The factories themselves were untouched, but without the ability to transport materials to and from the surface, production ceased completely. The pattern repeated across 17 star systems. Human forces struck with precision and intelligence, targeting infrastructure rather than populations, disrupting control networks rather than committing genocide. It was warfare conducted with the same creative problem-solving that Alina had used in diplomacy. Within 72 hours, the Stellar Confederacy was in chaos. High Magistrate Zaphon found himself trapped in his crystal tower as reports poured in from across Confederacy space. Their military command structure was in shambles. Their communication networks were compromised, and their member species were beginning to panic. The humans had done something unprecedented. They had defeated the galaxy's dominant power without massive casualties or planetary bombardments. They had simply proven that the Confederacy's authority was an illusion. Admiral Morrison's final transmission came exactly 1 week after Elena's execution. People of the galaxy, he began, and this time his tone was different. The cold fury was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like hope. The Stellar Confederacy told you that some species are meant to rule while others are meant to serve. They maintained their power by keeping you divided, by preventing cooperation between species, by executing anyone who proved their system was flawed. The Admiral gestured, and the view expanded to show the bridge of the retribution. Humans worked alongside beings from a dozen different species: Krell engineers, Thaxan navigators, and others who had chosen to stand with Earth against their former masters. Elena Vasquez died believing that different species could work together as equals. She believed that peace was possible, that cooperation was stronger than oppression. The Confederacy killed her for those beliefs. Morrison's voice grew stronger, but they couldn't kill the idea. The Krell and Thaxan Republic have joined our fleet. So have the Volani Mining Consortium, the Independent Traders Alliance, and 47 other species who were tired of being told they weren't worthy of self-determination. On screens across the galaxy, beings watched as representatives from dozens of species stepped forward, not as conquerors or the conquered, but as equals united by a common purpose. The Confederacy is finished, Morrison announced. Their fleets are disabled, their communication networks are under our control, and their member species are free to choose their own destiny. But we're not here to replace one empire with another. He paused, looking directly into the camera, with eyes that had seen too much war but still held hope for peace. Ambassador Elena Vasquez believed in a galaxy where different species could cooperate as equals, where problems could be solved through dialogue rather than domination. She died for that vision. We fought for it. Now we're going to build it. The transmission ended, but its impact would resonate for generations. 3 months later, on the anniversary of Elena's execution, Admiral Morrison stood before a monument on Lunar Base. The memorial was simpler: crystal pillar inscribed with the names of every being who had died for the cause of interspecies cooperation. Elena's name was at the top, but it was surrounded by thousands of others from dozens of different worlds. President Chen joined him, along with representatives from the new galactic coalition that had emerged from the Confederacies. Ashes. Unlike their predecessors, these leaders had been chosen by their own people rather than appointed by distant bureaucrats. She would have preferred the diplomatic solution, Chen said quietly. Morrison nodded. She would have, but she also would have understood why we did what we did. Elena believed in peace, but she wasn't naive. She knew that sometimes you have to fight for the right to be peaceful. Above them, the first ships of the coalition fleet were preparing for their next mission, not conquest or intimidation, but exploration and contact with species beyond the former Confederacy borders. The galaxy was vast, and there were always new civilizations to meet, new problems to solve, new opportunities for cooperation. Elena Vasquez had died believing in the possibility of a better galaxy. Her death had sparked a war that toppled the greatest empire in known space. But her true victory wasn't military, it was the proof that different species could indeed work together as equals. The Confederacy had taught the galaxy that some beings were meant to rule while others were meant to serve. Humanity had taught it something different, that any species willing to extend their hand in friendship would find it grasped in return, and that the greatest strength came not from domination, but from cooperation. Elena's final words had been a message to Earth. They had tried to do this the peaceful way. Her memorial bore a different message, one that would guide the new galaxy being born from the ashes of the old. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of justice, equality, and hope. These things are worth fighting for. The galaxy was learning that lesson, one world at a time.